Ngiyabonga, ngiyangqongqosa, Gigi. So I said that in the deep Zulu. I must now get the sort of more mixed one. But yeah, Gigi, thank you for that consciousness. I think we are so overwhelmed by this tech revolution that we might just be missing the bigger revolutions happening under our noses. So it makes me very conscious of the huge amount of work I have to do to get closer to where the real market is in this country. So thank you for that. Our last speaker before a tea break gives me great pleasure. No, I can't discriminate between our speakers. But it does give me a pleasure to introduce Khensani Nobanda, Group Executive Marketing Corporate Affairs from Nedbank. And it took me a while to get an insight out of Kensi, and then when she sent them to me, they were quite crazy. So the first one, Kensi was banned from a nightclub in Washington, D.C. for life. And a picture is still up there. So on our next trip, we'll go and check out that picture to verify, and I'll be sending it out on Twitter. She has a comic book character named after her, and she almost spent a night in jail in Dubai to such a degree that she had to call the embassy to bail her out. So I was going to say, I don't know if we should allow you onto the stage. But you are the headline sponsor, and you are my client. So welcome to the stage, Khensani. Super brave client, very excited about the work we're starting to do together with her. And she will strip down sponsorship, true to her character, in 17 minutes, asking whether sponsorship is truly brand value or just CMO ego.
Yes,
So,
thanks, Pepe.
thank you.
Julian, I'm going to ask you at the break to help Pepe and I renew our vows, because I really loved the new vows. I think, Pepe, right? Yeah? Cool. So I'm going to talk about sponsorship stripped down. And look, I think, we've seen bad sponsorship decisions. This is not about that. And let's just talk about bad sponsorship decisions. If you think of Lance Armstrong and Nike, there'd been 10 years of evidence that was saying that Lance Armstrong was doping. But because Nike had an emotional connection to Lance Armstrong, they chose to continue to support him. In fact, worse than that, they had ads with him saying, "What do you think I'm on?" That's how they were. They didn't care, basically. That's not what I'm here to talk about, though. We know bad sponsorship decisions. Another really bad sponsorship decision was a brand of Poo jeans sponsoring AC Milan. Now, if you love football, I'm sure you know of the Milan derby. Can you imagine Inter Milan standing and seeing these boys walking written Poo on their top? Bad sponsorship decision. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. What we're here to talk about is something called Chairman's Folly. So what is this exactly? So I work at Nedbank. We sponsor the Nedbank Cup. I can imagine 12 years ago, when the conversation happened that let's sponsor the Nedbank Cup, what the conversation was. I'm a massive Kaizer Chiefs fan. Had I been there, out of going, I'm going to hand over a trophy to Kaizer Chiefs, let's sponsor, guys, when? I can imagine the conversations Pepsi was having when they decided to do some work with Justin Timberlake. Oh, bloody hell, we're going to be hanging out with Justin Timberlake. Let's do it. Why not? That's what Chairman's Folly means. And in fact, there's a South African brand that I'm not going to mention that sponsors cricket. The story is that the execs of that brand actually wanted to hang out with South African cricket players. That is a very lousy way to make sponsorship decisions. Unfortunately, guys, and by the way, sponsorships are fantastic. So doing them, it's not bad. We receive probably about 500 sponsorship proposals a year. People like to tell us things like, "You'll have your logo on the thing." That's literally, But sponsorships really do help you get closer to your customers. They're really fantastic. They can give you high media value. And in a world where we can see we need to connect, digitalization is changing our marketing world, sponsorships do play a fantastic role. So I'll give you a little scenario about what happened at Nedbank when we had Chairman's Folly get involved with us. Firstly, actually, before I get there, I think what's important about sponsorships, before I get to the Chairman's Folly situation with Nedbank, was there has to be brand alignment. I think that's obvious, right? There has to be brand alignment. And by the way, if there isn't brand alignment, the impact on your brand is actually so much more severe than not doing it, because it actually has a very negative impact on your brand. So let me tell you what happened at Nedbank. I'm sitting in my lovely office at 135 Rivonia. I get a phone call from, let's just say, one of the top 2 people in the bank. And they go, hi, Khensani, there's a sponsorship called Global Citizen. We have an opportunity to do it. It's this many million euros. And you know what? It's your decision. I did not feel like it was my decision. I was like, okay. I mean, the first thing was, this was completely not planned. We got this like June, middle of the year. We've spent 6 months of our marketing budget. We've got 6 months planned. Pepe's trying to take all my money. So completely not planned. Secondly, we weren't sure if it had brand alignment. I personally had never heard of Global Citizen, so I didn't know what it was about. I must admit, though, that Toby, who's the head of sponsorship at Nedbank, and at the time, Buli was head of sponsorship for brand and advertising, when we then Googled what it was, and we realized that Jay-Z and Beyonce might be coming, I was like, maybe I'll get to meet Jay-Z. So look, ego again, right? And this is how we make sponsorship decisions in marketing, which isn't fantastic. And lastly, this top two at Nedbank, I had to come back to them in 48 hours to say yay or nay with a signed contract. Fortunately for us, right? And then the second thing, actually, from a red flag perspective, as a bank, we don't do sponsorships where we are not the headline sponsor, which is why this is the Nedbank IMC Conference. Secondly, obviously it wasn't in budget for us, so that was problematic. Fortunately for us, the more we started to learn about Global Citizen, we realized that this is massively aligned to our brand essence, which is money experts who do good. As a bank, we strongly believe that money well managed can make a real difference in people's lives. So our whole thing is, how do we use money to really, help people do good? So we thought, okay, Global Citizen, in the sense of what it is, we can actually use it quite well. Secondly, what also helped us was that we'd had a long-term partnership with Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. And obviously last year what Global Citizen did is they decided to celebrate Mandela's 100th centenary. So because of those two things, we actually were able to come up with something and come up with a great campaign. I think you can already tell now that I said yes after 48 hours, right? So we created a campaign called Vax the Nation, which was really based on a lot of South African kids. And it feels like, a lot of people think, kids get vaccinated normally. Actually, they don't. There's a lot of kids from rural areas and even some township areas that don't get access to vaccination. And what we created here was, how do we create a pot of money that would get health workers to go into those areas and vaccinate children. So I'm going to show you the ad that we launched.
Never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the death of a child
simply because of their circumstances.
Never again shall it be that a child is deprived from getting vaccinated. It's an ideal which we hope to live for and to achieve,
and it should never be an ideal
for which any child should have to die.
Help Nedbank vaccinate children. Open a Nedbank Children's Affinity account and move your salary.
Take action and Vax the Nation. See money differently. Nedbank.
So fortunately for us, even though this was Chairman's Folly, we had fantastic results. Firstly, we enabled 10,000 vaccinations over 18 months, meaningful impact. We generated 431,000 actions by about 75,000 people. But more importantly, if you think about impact on brand and sales, right? From an impact on brand perspective, a lot of us as banks, I don't know, a lot of my banking competitors are in this room, we're not really liked that much. So if you looked at our sentiment in market, before we did vaccination, it was negative and going even more negative. We launched Vax the Nation, and this is what happened to our brand sentiment. And by the way, and I can brag about this, and I know, hello ABSA, Standard Bank, we were the only bank to finish the year from a positive sentiment perspective for the full year when we then averaged it out, which was fantastic. But in addition to that, because they like to say we do arts and crafts as marketeers, so yeah, you created a great ad. Did you actually sell shit? We did. We saw a growth of 26% in the monthly accounts opening in the bank. So when you want to talk about, can sponsorship actually make an impact? Absolutely it can. However, you can't do that without at least looking at 4 things to make sure that a sponsorship makes an impact. So 1, you do have to plan. You can't be, people think you sit in your office waiting for a proposal and, we're going to put the logo there. It doesn't work like that. I can tell you that when Nedbank decided to do the Nedbank Cup 12 years ago, one of the challenges we had as a bank is that, at least from a middle market black consumer perspective, they didn't think we were relevant to them. They didn't think we understood them. So we went looking for Nedbank Cup as something that would help us connect to that target market. So the first thing is to be very clear what your objective is in the company, so that when you go look for the sponsorship, you're very clear what you're looking for. Then you search and select. And again, keep on going back to your objective. You will get really cool stuff. Guys, I can tell you, like, the number of proposals I get where I'm going, I can hang out with, maybe I should say yes. Do not do that. Like, make sure going back to your objective and your plan. Finally, activate it, and the activation piece is becoming even more important these days. People are reacting to things real time. People are judging us in the real time. And things happen so often from an activation perspective that we don't know how to react. Nedbank Cup, Kaizer Chiefs burns the stadium. We have to think about all of those things. So you really have to activate it well. And finally, evaluate. And it's important. So Dale knows we're going to sit after this and be like, okay, so how did that go? Did it help our brand, et cetera, and then decide if we're going to do it or not. However, if the ego indeed does come into play, be like me. Adapt and align, because you couldn't choose what you wanted to go with. You had no business objectives. Just adapt and align. I can tell you that sometimes I choose my battles very well, and this was a battle where I decided, you know what, actually we can use it to build a brand, and we can use it to sell accounts, so let's just do it. Then you can activate, then you can evaluate. To finish off, I wanted to just end with a 2-minute clip that just shows the end of our Vax the Nation campaign. It's really a special campaign for us, and Joe Public and us, we're very, very proud of it, especially given the results that it did. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this.
Never, never, and never again
shall it be in our lifetime, and it should never be an ideal which any child should have to die.
Never, never again shall it
Be that this beautiful land will again experience the death of a child.
never, never, never again shall it be that the children lack even the basic of living food and safety and shelter.
thank you guys for indulging me. And I'll just tell you a little anecdote. Working with kids is the most insane thing on earth. Just before we got on stage, so Ed Sheeran was performing. We're sitting backstage with these kids. They were all crying. The one with the curly hair, right, who didn't want to leave the stage was crying. Like, they were just like, this is the most miserable thing they've ever been involved in. The minute they got on stage, they were like, thank you very much.